Welcome to another episode of Heart to Heart. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Vinita Kamte. To the Last Bullet is Vinita's ode to her husband Ashok, who tragically lost his life serving the people of Mumbai in the 26/11 terror attacks. I don't think there is anyone that would have wanted to write this book, not even Vinita Kamte. The indescribable shock a family faces when something of this magnitude hits is life-altering, to say the least. And to then find that the press and the Ram Pradhan Committee report issued by the state government reported that Ashok and his fellow officers acted in haste, resulting in the loss of the officers' lives, could have been debilitating. However, in an inspiring display of devotion, Vinita invoked the RTI Act in search of the truth about what really happened in the final hours of her husband's life. For someone who is very private, her search for answers brought her into the public eye in a big way and brought attention to the accountability of those in power. Vinita, I thank you for coming on the podcast today and sharing your life with us. I know this hasn't been easy for you.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, Amit, thanks.
Vinita, tell me about yourself and your life before marriage, your childhood. What were those years like?
Upbringing, we had a very carefree and a very chilled out life. I remember my father really working hard. He used to be in the office till 3 and 4 in the morning, and my mother managed the house beautifully. And it was like there were no worries at all. We were really like in an atmosphere where we were encouraged to do everything. I mean, to study, to play games, to participate in all different activities. So it was really nice with no worries at all.
Right. I remember when we were talking a few minutes earlier, you'd mentioned that, your father came from a more traditional background, but he really encouraged you and your sisters to live this life of, empowerment and sort of empowered you in all ways possible. Is there something about that you wanted to share with us?
So my father's father was actually a municipal commissioner in Baroda state. And then they again shifted back to Maharashtra, and they had a house in a place in Karad and landed properties there. And my father decided to do his law. He studied in Ferguson College, then he did his law. And then he started practice. Though the family background, my grandparents were a little traditional, my father was very different, surprisingly. He never sort of made us believe that we were like daughters and we didn't have a brother, or, he didn't have a son. We were encouraged to study. We were encouraged to drive. When we started to learn to drive, he said, no, you have to know how to change the tire in case you're stranded somewhere in the middle of the road. So he taught us even how to change the tire. And he was very encouraging. In fact, my eldest sister, we all did law. He encouraged my mother after 14 years of marriage to do law. She stood second in the university. And my elder sister then got into politics by accident. And he encouraged her to get into politics. My other sister, my twin sister, is a High Court judge now. And so he encouraged all three of us. I was the only one who didn't want to practice. I did try my hand at practice, but I was very happy being a homemaker after marriage. And he every time kept telling me, no, you need to at least go teach in colleges, whatever salary you get, I'll give you double or 3 times that. But he couldn't ever get me to do that. But he was very encouraging. And I remember we went to England for my twin sister studied at Cambridge. She did her master's from there. And she said, it'll be nice if you get your driving license and drive in the UK. So my mother and me, we took our driving license, and everybody, my uncle and all, was so worried. They say, people are going to come here and drive in UK. I mean, what's wrong with you all? It's not like India. And my father was, it's okay, drive, I'm there, all. And my mother drove for some distance from London to little outskirts, and then they gave me the wheel to drive. And then after that, I drove all the way to Scotland and back, So he was very, very encouraging. So it was nice to be, brought up in a house where we were encouraged to do everything.
That it's lovely. And I loved what you said, that it was not that your father wanted you and your sisters to be like boys, but he wanted girls who are empowered and to feel that they have that self-confidence. I think that's an amazing mindset. It's a very progressive mindset, and I think it's very refreshing. I mean, I don't know. I've heard this, that a daughter is a daughter all her life, and a son is a son until he gets married. So, considering that you have two sisters, uh, of course, your sons are very young, but any thoughts on this?
Actually, we haven't really given it a thought because, I mean, yeah, if you look at it, I mean, we're always there for our parents. Like my mother lives on her own, she's 86. And yeah, we are all there for her whenever she just calls us. So whenever I'm in Pune, I spend my evenings with her. And we all make that effort. And I don't know what the difference would be if I had a brother. I don't know really. But yeah, I can see that we all really make time for did make time for my father and now for my mother.
I don't think anything could have prepared one for the violence and horror of 26/11. I remember being glued to the television as the events unfolded, watching in shock and thinking about the despair and helplessness of the ones that were held hostage at that time and their families. And on the other hand, then I saw these brave men and women from the forces going into that situation head on. I couldn't fathom the mettle of these men and women. What are they made of? What drives them? Their sense of purpose. It's an absolute honor for me to be sat next to the wife of such a man, brave, fearless. Tell me more about Ashok. What was he like?
One thing he always said, they're paying me for my passion. He loved his job. And I was always proud of the fact that he was always in the forefront. He would never shirk from his responsibility. When he became the additional commissioner, or when he was commissioner of police, Sholapur, a lot of his subordinates would say, Saab, you don't have to go everywhere yourself. And but I could see that most of the times the officers are scared of the repercussions if they beat up someone. There's human rights, there's something. There was something about him, he just wasn't scared. And I think he was one of the few officers who could get away, but even thrashing constables who were not on duty and were in Sholapur. And they were part of a political procession or a religious procession, which they shouldn't have been there. And they were holding the entire procession, it just not allowing them to move forward. So I remember him. I was there that weekend in Sholapur, and he told the inspector that why is it not moving ahead? So they couldn't convince those two guys. So then he sent the DCP, then somebody else. Finally, he went himself. He got hold of both the constables. He took them to the police station and thrashed the shit out of them. And he just wasn't scared. Like he believed that what I'm doing is right. So I'll bear the consequences. And I love that fact that he wasn't scared. He wasn't scared of being transferred. He wasn't scared. And I supported him completely on that because you can't live, if you believe that you're doing something right, then there's nothing to be scared of. And when he beat up this MLA also from Sholapur, I remember that night I had just spoken to him and, he said, okay, I'm going to sleep at 10:30. And then in the morning, the TV news started coming that he'd beaten up a politician. I said, but I just said good night to him at 10:30. What happened after that? So I called up the constable and he said, Saab, so rahe. So I said, wake him up. There is the TV news, the channels are running news that he's beaten up the politician. So then when I spoke to him, he said, yeah, so we broke the law. So I beat him up. I mean, he tried to hold on to my collar. So I beat him up. And he was just not scared of the repercussions, which is nice because most officers are scared of being transferred or, being suspended or things like that. So it was nice to be married to somebody. I feel really proud that I was married to somebody like that.
How did you both meet? What drew you to him?
Like I said, I was telling you just some time before that first thing is that the kind of respect his parents gave to my parents, because normally in an arranged match, the girl side is always considered, okay, she has to come to the boy's side or the parents have to approach. And what I liked about Ashok's dad was he told my parents, no, I don't believe in this. I will come. I don't have a permanent house in Pune. I live in Mumbai. But I will come to your house. Then my parents, my mother said they both seem to be the same age. And he was like, it's okay. Even if she's older to him, how does it matter? So it was the progressive thinking that really, I felt good that they respected my parents, one. And that is what it was very, very important for me. And then, of course, I met Ashok. And then there was an honesty about everything that he said, and he said, I will be staying in small areas, in Mofussil areas, places where you will not have access to big shops and stuff like that. So, I mean, are you prepared for that kind of life? And then, like arranged marriage is a gamble. And this was one gamble I was willing to take.
But did you have a courtship period at all?
We did, yes. For 6 months, we did. But then he was here for some time. Then he went back for his to finish his training at the National Police Academy, and post that we got married.
Right. I always think that the marriage is always a leap of faith. You can never know anybody enough, right? You might be with somebody for years before you get married, or months, but it's only after marriage and over a period of time that you get to really know each other. You see sides of each other that you haven't seen before. And it's a process, it's a journey. What was your life post-marriage like? Did it change significantly?
Before I got married, he had in fact called my mother and me to visit Bhandara, which is a very small rural area, to see what life was going to be there. There were no hotels, there were no restaurants, there was nothing, absolutely nothing. It was an Naxalite area. And I remember seeing the house where we would be staying. And so it was a drastic change. I mean, I never imagined myself to be going to these small places, because you always think you're going to move from one city to another city. But when you love somebody, I guess you're willing to you change those perceptions and willing to go to the places. And then, it was an Naxalite area. I remember I'm a person who comes from a very big family. Ashok also did. But then I loved having people over, and he was like, you need people all the time. I said, yeah, that's the way I've been brought up, And he was somebody who would, with my in-laws also, we had to tell them like we are coming, and then, inform them we are coming and go in our house. It was like an open house. Anybody could come anytime. So he changed a lot, to adjust. And he realized people come not for the food or anything. It's just that you enjoy company. And then, he changed a lot. In our family, we can sit and chat till 12 and 3 in the morning. So he would sit with us, have his dinner, and then say goodnight and say, you guys can continue. So he didn't make a lot of adjustments, and he loved having people over.
Lovely. And I think that's really what true partnership is all about, right? Both people take steps towards each other and embrace each other, and whatever, people bring with that, right?
In fact, I remember when we got married, my aunt came to stay with us, and she couldn't speak English. And Ashok couldn't speak Marathi. So I was so worried. I was, how are they going to converse with each other, and whether she'll feel uncomfortable, what if he doesn't speak to her. And he was super nice to her. He made all the effort to talk in, his broken Marathi. And that really made me feel so nice. I mean, that, he's taking so much effort, So I think those are small gestures that you show that make you feel that, he's the right person, I mean...
and one of many reasons to fall in love with
and I couldn't cook. I learned to cook in Bhandara. And I remember chapatis is something I still can't cook. So I would call the chapatis from the mess, and I would, if the cook didn't come, of course, we had a cook. But then I would cook the veggies, but the chapatis would always come from the police mess. But he would never complain. He was like,
Ashok, I believe, was selected for the Internal Revenue Service, but he chose the police service given his love of the uniform and what it stood for. He was known as a one-man army, always leading from the front. Did you both as a couple ever discuss the fact that this life that you both shared together could one day, in a blink, change forever? did you carry this constant fear through the years?
Not really. When we got married, we were in an Naxalite area. So there used to be a lot of, I remember those times, there were a lot of landmine, no, there were accidents that happened in Bhandara. So at that time, yes, I did live in fear because there was no connectivity. And suddenly, somebody would come and say, if he didn't come back, I would call up and ask, and they would say, oh, there's been an ambush and we've lost few people. So there was no way of knowing what exactly is happening. So I remember one time the DIG from Nagpur came home. He said, no, everything is fine. We've lost 2 people, but yeah, things are in control. So yeah, I remember going to Nagzira and all these, beautiful places. But I was always scared, where there were mines planted somewhere because, we lost a lot of policemen at that time when we were there. There were a lot of Naxal skirmishes. But one didn't expect this in a place like Mumbai or something like this to happen. I mean, this was like something unexpected.
Yeah. So please, tell us about that day, 26/11, 2008, the day that changed your life forever, I guess, in many ways.
My father-in-law, my mother-in-law, and the boys, we'd all gone out for dinner. And on the way back, Ashok called up saying there is some firing happening at the Taj. And it seems to be a terrorist attack. And then when we went home, we switched on the television. My father-in-law was not keeping well. In fact, he was supposed to go for some procedure 2 days later. And we all watched the television. My father-in-law went to bed and I kept watching. And I didn't want to disturb him because, they were busy with the phone calls and everything. Only once I remember he did say that I'm going to Oberoi's because Mr. Ghaffur had called him. And then I decided not to call till a friend called and she asked me, where is Ashok? So I said, he's been sent to Oberoi's. She said, no, watch the news. And that's when it started coming, at the bottom. So my younger son, I think he was sleeping. And then I had the neighbors start coming home. So that's when it really hit me that, something has happened. But, with somebody sick at home, Ashok's parents were divorced. So his mother lived in Delhi and 2 boys here. So it was very difficult to sort of, I had to be strong because they were just looking at me every time. So yeah, that news, I kept thinking, yeah, there's some hope. But then when all 3 names, kept flashing, Mr. Karkare's, Ashok's and Salaskar's, I knew it was like, it has to be true.
I was at dinner with the family last night, a family that knows you well. And I believe, like you said, the first time you heard about Ashok having fallen was on television, just like the rest of us. Considering that the family has been serving in the police force for generations, was there any conversation over the years of one of your sons joining the service, or did the wounds run very deep?
No, not really. They were not interested right from the beginning. It had nothing to do with this. And I, in fact, had they joined, I would have supported them.
Right. Your children, Rahul and Arjun, were very, very young at the time. And do they remember the time with their father? How did your equation with them change post the loss that you all had?
The older one, soon after, I think 6 months later, went to Kodaikanal. And I was happy he went away from Maharashtra because I was busy with this RTI work, the book. My father was not well. He was in and out of the hospital. So the younger one was already giving me sort of, he used to get anxious. And he would keep saying, what if something happens to you? Even if I didn't answer my phone call, if I was in Mumbai for the book work or something, and I didn't answer, he would get breathless and stuff like that. He was staying with my mother in those days whenever I went to Mumbai. And so one day I just sat him. I wanted to hug him, but I said, no, I have to make him strong. So I told him, yeah, if something happens to me, you have my mother, my father, my sisters to look after you. I said, there are people who've lost both their parents and there's always someone to look after. So you'll never be on your own. So, I didn't want them to be weak. I didn't want him to be. I mean, he was the only one who was with me for the longest time, like 4 years. Rahul had gone to boarding. So I didn't want him to get this anxiety, if I didn't answer my calls, or to feel that what happens if something happens to me. You've got to be strong in life. These kind of, things happen. And if I'm not strong and I don't teach them to be strong, they have a life ahead of them. So the younger one spent more time, so I could, sort of, make him strong. And then after, I think, 5 years, my older one came back to Bombay, and then he went to Xavier's. He stayed with my sister. Then when I stayed with him, I spent more time with him. But we don't really talk so much, honestly speaking. My younger one is able to speak a lot more about Ashok. My older one and me, I don't know, somehow we are not able to.
Do you think
speak
it's
so much.
because he went away very you said 6 months after his dad passing? Do you think in some ways that the healing was very different, or has not happened for him the way it did for your younger one, because you were still there and he got that support, and he and you could talk about it, he knew he'll be understood, whereas the older one might not have felt understood talking about it with his friends or peers?
One thing, I was happy that he was away from Maharashtra in an atmosphere where he had no access to the media or to the newspapers. Because what I went through, my younger one saw me go through a lot with the media reporting, or, there were so many things happening in the house every single day. It was like talking to the journalists and getting upset over something that they were writing, or, a lot of things. So in a way, he grew up in an atmosphere where there were a lot of games, and fortunately for him, he had his dorm parents who was Ashok's sports teacher. So they looked after him really, really well. So I think what happened, it was good that he went away from here.
Right. There is a lot of angst, anguish, which is reflected on your book. Do you think as a country we let him down?
I wouldn't say as a country. I think it's the force that let him down. All three of us wanted was that the Mumbai police should put the record straight. It was not our job to do it. And there was a narrative that they were giving to the press, and the press, without even finding the truth, were printing it. And I remember in those days, there was a series that was coming, in one of the top newspapers, that, every day, that now next day it was going to be Mr. Karkare walks into a dark alley. And I didn't know what was coming, because the earlier day, whatever news was printed was all rubbish. So I called one of the journalists and I told her, I said, she said, okay, you talk to the topmost person in Delhi. So I spoke to him and he said, okay, tell me what is wrong. I said, well, all the other facts are wrong, but even the basic fact that where we stayed in Chembur and not in Baikala. So then I spoke to the Delhi editor, then he put me on back to the Mumbai editor. And then he argues with me, but you stayed in Baikala. I said, yeah, in 2000. I should know better where we stayed. So, it was like, I said, you guys are printing rubbish. Millions are reading in the newspaper and going to believe your story. I said, I have documents to prove what you're saying is wrong. But, it was like very difficult time, because most of the media was writing a narrative that the Mumbai police was giving. And all that I kept telling Mr. Ghafoor at that time also, and the additional CP, that it is your job to, tell the truth. It's not my job to find out. And, correct. That is, you owe it to your men. I said, today, all of you all are sitting in your chair is because they've paid with their lives. I said, and I think you're not being fair to them. And I think people have been really, really nice to us. People were very kind, very supportive. So I don't think as a nation anybody let us down. It was our own force that let us down. I have a feeling that they did commit some mistakes, maybe not intentionally, but in the process to hide the mistakes that they made. They didn't realize that they are trying to put the blame on somebody who's not able to answer for themselves or to, explain themselves. And I remember in hindsight that the women, the officers' wives who came from Mumbai police. One of them said, "Oh, don't believe, if the DG office, all the ladies come and tell you that Mumbai police made mistakes." I was in no position to understand what they meant. It was later on that it hit me that it was a husband who was holding the, control room reins with him. And yeah, when the lies started, that's when they refused to tell us the truth. I remember Mr. Gafoor sending one of the officers and saying it was Ashok's weapon that injured Kasab. So I said, but why is it not being showed? If it's not him, it's okay. But I mean, the truth should come, what happened in the lane. They refused to. And I said, the media also, it was like constantly three officers together, three officers together. What about the three joint CPs who were sitting in the control room together at the same time? In the Ram Pradhan committee report, the officers have said that, I got a call saying that they're going to attack the commissioner's office. But you had three joint CPs sitting in the same office. Nobody questioned that. Nobody questioned that in Taj, there were three IPS officers together in the Taj control room. Why was the focus constantly on these three officers? And in rank, at least, one was a additional CP, one was one was joint CP, and one was an inspector. There in the control room, they were all three joint CPs. So, I mean, even the media kept saying it again and again, which really used to upset us.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe loss and healing have a journey. They really start from disbelief to this heart wrenching pain, anger, betrayal, and the loop just keeps going. Do share with us what your journey was like after losing your husband, Ashok.
Honestly, if I had tears in my eyes or anything, my boys would just keep looking at me. So that was one thing I just couldn't get myself for them to watch me in that state, because they were equally helpless and they were really, really young. And so there were comments from politicians who came home that they were not well prepared. And, there were a lot of loose comments that were made. And Ashok was the only one, the person from the Mumbai police who had an AK-47, who was very apt, very good with his weapons. He was carrying tear gas shells because he was supposed to go to a Trident. And so I didn't like that kind of statement. And he was somebody who always spoke on the wireless set. And even before leaving, I, then managed to get through. I was lucky that one constable came and gave me these conversations. And I realized that he had given, instructions in his area. He had vital installations in his area. And for all of them to be protected, and he had sent cops there. And so, it surprised me that there was not a single conversation on the wireless set after he reached here. And with the children looking at me, these kind of comments, I had no choice but to be strong if I had to find out the truth. I mean, I had no time to grieve, honestly speaking. It was like, just if I was not strong enough, I wouldn't have been able to, get there to write the book. So writing the book also was a very cathartic experience for me. Today, I'm at peace with myself that I've done what I could do best. The matter was with RTI. We won the matter. The RTI commissioner held that, yes, the logs were fudged.
It's been more than a decade. Do you feel like you have healed?
No, honestly, I keep myself so busy. I do farming. I do a lot of things. Sometimes work. There's so many obstacles in my work, and things don't happen. And I always say maybe that's God's way of, creating these obstacles, because maybe he thinks you don't need that time where, to myself. Because I remember I went to one of these elderly ladies in our society, and she had this Guru Vani that plays in the Golden Temple. And that music was playing and I was just crying. I mean, there was no reason, there was no conversation. So sometimes I feel, it's nice that I'm busy, And I never complain about the obstacles in my life because I just feel maybe it's God's way of keeping my mind busy.
You know, I mean, moving on means different things for different people. Uh, what does it mean for you? How have you changed over the years?
I don't know whether I've changed. I think I've just kept myself busy with things I love doing. Um, a lot of my time went on looking after my in-laws, the kids. It's now that I'm giving time to myself and my health. I love farming, so that was one thing. Whenever I would get stressed, that was my stress buster. I would drive from Mumbai to Talegaon in the morning, go back, reach back in the night at 10:30, 11, take the boys for a movie after that. So, I devised methods to keep myself really busy and do things which I enjoy.
I've had my share of losing loved ones, and so often I've got this stab in the heart thinking how things would have been if the person was there, about the bond that my kids will never have, or the weight that my parents carry of having seen their child go before them. Tell us about your husband's parents and their life after they lost their son, and what did that do to your relationship with them?
I think my mother in law completely gave up because she's very fond of my husband. And she would not make much conversation. She was completely heartbroken. And yeah, I mean, I could see she just, you know, couldn't deal with it. Same with my father-in-law. He became a loner. He was such a outgoing person, but suddenly he withdrew into a shell. And yeah, I shared very good equations with them even before, I mean, when we were married. And post marriage, also, my father-in-law doted on me. I mean, I looked after him. Even my mother-in-law lived in Delhi, and I would go as often as I could. Whenever she was unwell, I would be there for her. But she was a very strong woman, and she would always tell me, "No, you look after your children. I'm okay. You look after your children." I learned a lot from her. She never expected me that I should be there. Whatever time I spent, I could see while there were later part of the years, she would probably feel, and she refused to come and stay with any one of us. She lived on her own terms in her own house in Delhi. Yeah, I saw her. She was completely devastated. Same with my father in law. And he also would say, "No, don't trouble her. She's got two kids to manage. Don't tell her I'm not well. She'll come rushing back." And yeah, they were extremely, extremely supportive. I had a very nice relationship with them.
With time, our definition of happiness and the things that we do that make us happy, they change. What makes you happy today?
What makes me happy? Yeah, I keep myself, I am a very house proud person. Uh, I love I mean, I've got this farm where I do homestead farming. I grow vegetables, I have fruit trees, I make wine. So, yeah, I do small things that make me happy. I'm very happy with these things.
And what would you've had quite a journey. What would your advice be to anyone struggling after having lost the one they love?
I remember a friend of mine. She's a spinster, and we were both driving back from Bombay, and there was this song playing. It's a beautiful song which resonated. I had tears in my eyes while driving, and she also had tears in eyes. So I guess it sums up so beautifully what I feel. So it says, "कभी पलकों में आंसू है, कभी लब पे शिकायत है, मगर ए जिंदगी मुझे तुमसे मोहब्बत है." It sums up something so beautifully. And I think everybody has a journey, there's some kind of problems everyone has in their life. And I guess she could, resonate with those words. I could in my way with that. And yeah, life is beautiful. I mean, and you have to teach your children that there are ups and downs in life, and you still have to be able to get over that and carry on with life.
Do you think you could ever love again?
No, I don't think. I had such a beautiful relationship. I mean, like the kind of freedom Ashok gave me, the equality we had in our relationship. I remember when I used to look after the children, he used to say, "Okay, you come here. I'll look after the kids now." He would get me my newspapers, in bed, my bed tea. And yeah, he said, "Oh, you need to go on a holiday now that you are looking after the kids." So, I mean, I've had shared such a beautiful relationship that I don't think I can.
Vinita, your courage is incredible and your resilience is something I think our listeners will remain in awe of. Thank you for showing us the power of love, even amidst great turmoil. Next week, my guest is author and academic Amitav Kumar. He's married to a fellow academic, Mona Ahmed Ali. He's Hindu, she's Muslim. He's Indian, she's Pakistani. They're both American. And his stories and essays are thought provoking, witty, insightful, all at the same time. I hope to see you next week. Till then, take care.